What's going on, guys? It's Greg here, aka NYPrepper. It is Friday, January 2nd, 2026, and I have an emergency alert to share with you guys. Right now, it is 16:08 Eastern Time here in the United States, and we have some major breaking news coming in from Iran and from all over the world. So, we have a coup underway in Iran. So, over the last couple of days, there have been these protests that have turned into riots and have now turned into a coup. These protesters or rioters are attacking Iranian government and police and security force buildings and military bases, including IRGC installations. And what's very concerning is that Trump posted this comment here on his social media account on Truth Social, basically saying that if Iran starts to shoot and kill these protesters, then the U.S. will come to their rescue, okay? And last night in the live stream, there was some footage that I shared of Iranian security forces shooting at these protesters. Now, unfortunately, I cannot post those videos here in video format. That's why you got to tune into the live streams, because I can only show those kinds of videos live. Otherwise, YouTube will get me in trouble. But let me read to you what Trump wrote here last night after those videos came out. He wrote, "If Iran shoots and violently kills peaceful protesters, which is their custom, the United States of America will come to their rescue. We are locked and loaded and ready to go. Thank you for your attention to this matter." Wow. Okay, so this is huge news. And also, Israel updated its intelligence assessment of the Iranian coup, concluding that the unrest is creating a real threat to the stability of the Ayatollah Khamenei's regime and could lead to its collapse. Okay, so that's what Israel is saying. And I want to just read to you some more details here over the last 2 to 3 days of what's been going on over there. So on Wednesday, New Year's Eve, Iran shut down numerous businesses, universities, and government offices across 21 out of 31 provinces. So that's like, what, 2/3 of the country? All government buildings, businesses, everything closed down. Apparently, protesters are now clashing with police and security forces in Shiraz, Isfahan, Kermanshah, and even in Tehran, the capital. Crowds have been chanting "Death to Khamenei" and "Death to the dictator." In Fasa, protesters stormed the governor's office. Apparently, IRGC forces opened fire on these protesters. Military helicopters were flying overhead. There's unconfirmed reports claiming that protesters took control of Ram Hormuz in Khuzestan province and have been burning down the local government headquarters. Now, before I get into more of the details here, I want to just show you guys something that happened last night. For those of you guys who weren't tuning into the live stream, we had a large number of nuclear codes, U.S. nuclear codes, transmitted from about midnight Eastern time to about 2 or 3 in the morning. So over a 2-hour period, we had about 20 nuclear codes or emergency action messages transmitted on shortwave radio. And here's a clip of one of those nuclear codes. Now, what's interesting is there was also encrypted data being transmitted on the primary U.S. nuclear war frequency, but it was only audible in Eastern Europe, specifically Poland. Now, this leads me to believe that the U.S. was transmitting these nuclear codes from Poland, potentially Powidz Air Base, which is a highly secretive base in the Poznań region of northwest Poland, closer to Germany, that the U.S. has previously moved stealth bombers and F-22 stealth fighters to in prior years. But this could be related to a massive attack on Ukraine. So we heard some Russian bomber activity today on the Russian bomber frequency. So the Russian bombers are mobilizing and they're preparing for some kind of big attack on Ukraine. And I don't know if all those nuclear codes last night were related to that, plus this data in Poland being transmitted, which is just a very unusual place for the U.S. nuclear forces to be transmitting data from. But it tells me that it's intended for U.S. strategic forces in Eastern Europe if the signal's emanating from Poland, okay? So it's possible that Russia could launch a massive attack on Ukraine tonight. I will be monitoring the situation live. So make sure you tune into the live stream later on tonight, probably around 10 p.m. Eastern time. If anything crazy happens before then, I'll come on earlier. But going back to Iran, we're hearing that Iranian protesters took control of the IRGC base in Abbottabad and set it on fire. In Isfahan, protesters set fire to a minibus linked to Iranian security forces. Also, protesters set fire to a statue of Soleimani. Remember the general that Trump assassinated in 2018? They launched the missile at Soleimani and killed him. He was the general. Well, the protesters set fire to a statue of him in the Khuzestan province in western Iran. In Bandar Abbas, which is near the Strait of Hormuz, videos showed protesters chanting "Death to the regime" and "Long live the Shah." Wow. So guys, I hate to say it, but this could potentially be a CIA-sponsored situation going on right now. Okay, this could potentially be the CIA and Mossad. That they've probably been planning this for the last few months. So we'll have to wait and see what happens, but it looks like potentially the leadership of Iran is going to get overthrown, and Trump is just itching to launch some missiles to protect the protesters. I think we're going to see it, guys. I think we're going to see more strikes on Iran by the U.S. and Israel, and I think potentially these protests are going to lead to a full-scale overthrow of the Ayatollah Khomeini. And footage coming in from Marv Dasht, Iran, showed 2 civilians who appear to have been shot in the legs during the protests by security forces. And the Mehr news agency, an Iranian government-affiliated news outlet, reported that the office of the Friday prayer leader in Junquan, Chaharmal, and Bakhtiari province were set on fire during protests. And there have been nationwide calls for protests to continue in Tehran. There were pictures of the Ayatollah Khomeini that were torn down in Elam. So guys, it's really escalating over there in Iran. I will be monitoring the situation very, very closely. Let me just play a sample of this U.S. nuclear code being transmitted on top of encrypted data that was broadcasted out of Poland last night. A very unusual place for Poland to broadcast encrypted data from. So very, very unusual. And then also very unusual, we had an over-the-horizon radar that was really loud last night, and it was audible globally on shortwave radio, and it was bleeding over into the primary U.S. nuclear war frequency, either by accident or on purpose. But this is likely the Russian radar that they installed in Kaliningrad in the last year or two. This is basically a modern day Russian woodpecker. If you remember the Russian woodpecker during the Cold War, this was the massive radar, over the horizon radar, that was built in the Chernobyl region. And it was so powerful that it would interfere with shortwave radio around the entire world. It was meant to detect the launch of nuclear missiles from the U.S. But listen to this. And last night, for some odd reason, a NATO reconnaissance plane was flying along the border of Poland, Belarus, and Ukraine. And Trump retweeted or reposted this New York Post article talking about how basically this story of Putin's compound being attacked by Ukraine is just a bunch of BS. He reposted the New York Post article. It says, Putin attack bluster shows Russia is the one standing in the way of peace. And we'll get into that in just a minute. There's a big update about this alleged attack on Putin's compound, okay? And the Israeli Air Force carried out a wave of airstrikes this morning against Hezbollah military infrastructure, including a training site utilized by Hezbollah. And the U.S. Department of State put out a statement related to China's blockade exercise that they did right before the new year. They said that China's military activities and rhetoric toward Taiwan and others in the region increased tensions unnecessarily. We urge Beijing to exercise restraint, cease its military pressure against Taiwan, and instead engage in meaningful dialogue. The United States supports peace and stability across the Taiwan Strait and opposes unilateral changes to the status quo, including by force or coercion. Okay, so urging China to stand down in their military pressure against Taiwan. This is huge news, guys. The U.S. openly telling China to stand down, chill out, take a chill pill, stop doing drills around Taiwan, stop attacking fishermen in the Philippines. All right, stop doing drills off the coast of Australia. And in Xi Jinping's New Year's Eve speech, he hinted at reunifying Taiwan with China. He said, quote, "We Chinese on both sides of the Taiwan Strait are united by blood and family ties. The reunification of our homeland is historically inevitable, and no one can prevent it." Wow. Okay, so clearly Xi Jinping is not afraid of the U.S. Helping Taiwan, but this is a huge situation going on, and it looks like China may make a move on Taiwan this year based on the latest intelligence assessments that said that China would make a move by 2027. And North Korean dictator Kim Jong-un promised an invincible alliance with Russia in 2026 during his New Year's speech. And the Maduro regime in Venezuela just ordered reinforced security at two key oil facilities, the Paraguana refinery and the Ana Maria petrochemical complex. So Venezuela deploying military forces to two critical oil facilities, a refinery and some kind of petrochemical facility. Maybe the U.S. is going to try to blow them up or seize control of them. And we're hearing that Venezuela detained multiple Americans over the last few weeks as U.S. pressure on Maduro ramps up. So I don't know if they're going to hold those Americans as hostage, essentially. And the government of Russia made a formal diplomatic request that the U.S. stop its pursuit of an oil tanker that had been sailing for Venezuela and is now fleeing the Coast Guard in the Atlantic Ocean, according to two people with knowledge of the matter. The request was delivered late on New Year's Eve to the State Department, said the people, who discussed the diplomatic message on the condition of anonymity. It was also sent to the White House's Homeland Security Council, one of the people said. So Russia is asking the U.S., hey, stop chasing this tanker. It's ours. Okay, remember that tanker put a Russian flag on its bow, okay? And it's somewhere near Iceland now, heading back to Russia, essentially. So this is huge news. And Finland detained a ship due to damage to an undersea cable between Helsinki and Tallinn, Estonia. On December 31st, New Year's Eve, Finnish telecom company Elisa reported damage to an underwater communications cable in the Gulf of Finland between Finland and Estonia. The failure was detected at around 5 a.m. and did not affect services. The Finnish Border Guard Service, as part of a joint operation, took control of the St. Vincent and the Grenadines flagged vessel Fitberg, which was in the area of the cable damage. The ship is being escorted to Upaniemi, and the circumstances of the incident are being investigated by Finnish police. Meanwhile, Estonia reported damage to a total of 5 underwater communications cables. In particular, faults were detected on the cable between Estonia and Sweden. Wow. So Russia is at it again. They're using these shadow ships to damage undersea cables connecting the Baltics to the rest of Europe. And this is part of the preparation stage of an invasion of the Baltics. Okay, they have to cut off the communications to the Baltics before they invade. Okay, so this is huge news. And we have some new information regarding the attack on Putin's compound. Total BS, like I told you guys a couple of days ago, that it was just made up BS. And all the people out there that are pushing this theory that, oh, the Ukrainians attacked this compound, you need to really check yourself before you wreck yourself, okay? Because that is fake news and you're pushing fake news, okay? So U.S. President Trump was briefed today by CIA Director John Ratcliffe on an intelligence assessment that there was no Ukrainian attack on Putin's residence. And that was actually, I think, yesterday. Sorry. Okay, so John Ratcliffe briefed Trump that there was no Ukrainian attack on Putin's residence, and hence this is why Trump reposted this New York Post article. Okay, and we're also hearing from numerous sources. U.S. national security officials said Wednesday that Ukraine didn't target Russian President Putin's residence or one of his residences or multiple, okay? And the Russian Defense Ministry is claiming now that more than half of the drones used in this alleged attack on Putin's residence were intercepted hundreds of kilometers away from the estate. So how convenient, right? Nobody heard any air defense activity near Putin's compound. There were no eyewitnesses. Nothing happened anywhere near his compound. You got to remember, Putin has the best security of any leader on earth, better than the U.S. president, okay? And if they had to shoot down these drones, you would have heard something or seen something. U.S. and European intelligence would have picked that up. Okay, but they're saying that, oh yeah, we shot them down hundreds of kilometers away. That's why you didn't hear anything going on in Valdai where he lives. You know, just pure nonsense. And Ramzan Kadyrov, the leader of Chechnya, was admitted to a hospital in Moscow on December 24th. His present condition is not known. So guys, it sounds to me like God is punishing Kadyrov because he's a scumbag, okay? He's a sicko, and God sees everything, okay? You may commit all kinds of sins here on earth, but God watches what we do, and you may be able to hide your sins from other people, but he sees everything, and he will punish you, and that's what's happening here with Kadyrov. He thought he was invincible all these years, and look what happened. Now he's in a hospital of all days, Christmas Eve, he was admitted to a hospital on Christmas Eve. Isn't that something? And Trump called his former Ukraine representative Keith Kellogg an idiot. So apparently he asked Keith Kellogg about Zelensky because Kellogg called Zelensky courageous, and Kellogg said that he believes that Zelensky is courageous, and Kellogg said it's an existential fight on Ukrainian soil for the nation's survival. When was the last time an American president faced that? It was Abraham Lincoln. And then apparently after Kellogg said that, Trump told his other advisors that Kellogg was an idiot. Wow. And this is pretty interesting. While U.S. military aid to Ukraine was frozen or slowed in 2025, the CIA quietly kept Ukraine in the fight. The CIA was allowed to continue with intelligence sharing. Apparently, they were giving Ukraine the coordinates of oil refineries and various infrastructure in Russia that the Ukrainians were hitting with drones. So there's a lot that goes on behind the scenes, guys. Okay. Like right now, for example, I'm sitting here recording this video and there's a U.S. nuclear code transmitting on my radio. Zulu, Romeo, Victor, Kilo. So, very interesting. U.S. intelligence assisting Ukraine in all these attacks on the oil infrastructure. Okay. And 2 more Patriot air defense systems arrived in Ukraine from Germany. And the Trump administration must return hundreds of California National Guard troops to Governor Gavin Newsom's control, a federal appellate court ruled on New Year's Eve. And Axios reported that Trump and Netanyahu did not agree publicly on a timeline or understanding regarding future military action against Iran. Guys, they're not going to make anything public. You know, that's the problem with the mainstream media, okay? You know, the mainstream media wants you to believe that Trump or Netanyahu, they're going to go out there and do an address to the world and say, yeah, we're going to strike Iran next week at 5 p.m. It's not going to happen. That's stupid. Okay, maybe prior presidents did that, but that makes absolutely zero sense. Clearly, Trump and Netanyahu agreed to something because suddenly now there's riots spreading across Iran, right around the new year. Clearly, this is a CIA and Mossad operation that I'm sure Netanyahu and Trump talked about over the holidays in Mar-a-Lago. And a U.S. MQ-9 Reaper drone crashed in Afghanistan. Here's a picture of it. This was released just yesterday. Supposedly, this Reaper drone crashed in Afghanistan. And there was this sad situation in Switzerland at a Swiss ski resort. A bar caught on fire on New Year's Eve, and apparently 47 people have been killed and over 100 injured. The Swiss president called it one of the worst tragedies our country has ever experienced. And what's really sad is there's actual video footage of it. And here you can see this person was partying. They were partying, and the ceiling is literally on fire, and people are just drinking and partying and filming the flames. I don't know if they were doing some kind of drugs. I'm sure they were. Switzerland has a very strong party scene. Lots of different types of drugs people use there. Party drugs, the famous party drugs from the early 2000s. Okay, they make people think they're on a different planet and they don't know what's going on, and they see fire right in front of them, and they're in another planet. So this is just totally insane footage here. That's why you don't want to do drugs. And also, a massive fire engulfed the top of a church in central Amsterdam on New Year's Eve. So we had this situation in Switzerland with this bar catching on fire, killing 50 people. And then this church in the Netherlands in Amsterdam burned completely to the ground. Wow. And also in Germany, on New Year's Eve, there was total anarchy. Apparently, celebrations turned violent in multiple cities, marked by misuse of fireworks as weapons against police and emergency services, alongside tragic fatalities. Two 18-year-old men, 18 years old, guys, died in Bielefeld from homemade firework explosions, one when a pipe bomb detonated in his face in a playground, the other from a spherical bomb in a residential area. In Berlin, police reported over 300 arrests, 9 preventative detentions, and 9 injured emergency workers, mainly from acoustic trauma. Officers faced repeated rocket attacks, responded with water cannons, and seized over 200,000 illegal fireworks. Wow. In Essen, rioters torched barricades and trash containers, then bombarded arriving firefighters with fireworks, forcing them to retreat until heavy police support allowed them to extinguish the fires. Leipzig's Konnewitz district saw multiple barricades erected from trash bins and set ablaze, with police targeted by fireworks upon arrival and forced to withdraw. In Hamburg, fireworks struck emergency crews and officers in several areas, prompting police retreats. So, wow, Europe is just descending into chaos, guys. Descending into total chaos. I want to remind you guys that in Switzerland, they have this annual satanic ceremony, which is just super creepy. They do this satanic ceremony every single year. And Switzerland is also where they have the World Economic Forum. Okay, so a lot of satanic activity in Switzerland. I wouldn't be surprised if there's a gate, a literal gate to hell somewhere in the Swiss Alps. That's why Hitler wanted control of Switzerland, even though Switzerland was neutral. And that's where they have the massive particle accelerator, the biggest on Earth, is in Switzerland, okay, which I believe is a gate to hell. And Trump said in an interview with the Wall Street Journal yesterday that his health is excellent and that he has been taking aspirin for the last 25 years, which is why he bruises on his hands. And Trump said that he's removing the National Guard from Chicago, LA, and Portland. So it seems like Trump is softening his tone a little bit on deploying troops to the big cities because of probably the midterms coming up this year. And the U.S. Department of Justice is now reviewing more than 5 million documents related to Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell, far more than previously disclosed. More than 400 attorneys are now involved, but officials do not expect additional releases until January 20th or the 21st, well past the December 19th deadline set by Congress. And we're also hearing now that in 2003, Trump banned Epstein from Mar-a-Lago after an 18-year-old spa worker there reported that Epstein was being creepy and wanted to have sex with her. Wow. And the new mayor of New York City, the radical Muslim socialist Mamdani, gave a speech on New Year's Eve and was sworn in. In his speech, he firmly dismissed expectations that he would soften his views after taking office. He also reaffirmed his commitment to democratic socialist ideology and rejected the centrist compromises that, in his view, failed New Yorkers. He harshly criticized the political establishment for its lack of imagination and complacency, which have led to a decline in the quality of life in the metropolis. You know what has caused a decline in the quality of life in New York? It's excessive taxation, excessively high cost of living. It's just too expensive to live in New York. Okay, you have to be very, very wealthy to survive and have a good quality of life. And everything fun is illegal. Fireworks are illegal. Firearms are illegal. There's no freedom. Okay, it's a police state. It's like East Germany. Okay, and Mamdani is like a modern day Bolshevik. Okay, he's like a modern day Lenin, the way that he's talking. Okay, he sounds just like Lenin. That's what Lenin said in Russia in 19 what was it, 18 October Revolution. He was complaining about the political establishment in Russia, the kings and the monarchy, and that's how the Bolsheviks took over, the socialist revolution, and he's doing the same thing here in the US. But that's the latest breaking news that I have. I might be back later on tonight around 10 p.m. or a little bit later in the live stream. And I hope you guys are having a good New Year holiday. And I hope your holidays have been very good. And hope you guys spend a lot of time with your family. That's very important. And I wish all of you guys the best in 2026. Good health, stress-free living, and lots of time with your family. And until the next time, take care, God bless, and don't forget the 3 Ps: prepare, practice, and persevere. And before I continue with the breaking news, I wanted to mention the sponsor for this update, which is MyPatriot Supply. Guys, MyPatriot Supply is doing a massive sale on their 3-month emergency food supply. And to get the deal, you got to use my link. It's in the description below this video. It's preparewithNYPrepper.com. So they're selling their 3-month emergency food kit at 30% off. Plus, they're going to throw in an additional month of food. So that's 4 months of food. And the normal price would be $944. And they're selling it at just under $700 for 4 months of food. And this food has a 25-year shelf life. And it's all packed into rugged, watertight buckets that don't take up a lot of space in your home. And the food is obviously nutritious, which is very important for surviving any kind of SHTF situation. You can also use this food for camping and traveling. But use the link preparewithNYPrepper.com to get a free month of emergency food with your 3-month emergency food kit from MyPatriot Supply, all at 30% off, just $700 for 4 months of food. So use the link preparewithNYPrepper.com to get the deal, and the link is in the description below this video.